Hello and welcome to Santino's World, Episode 3. I want to pose a question. Would you still compete in whatever sport it is if you knew that you were going to lose? As fighters, this is predominantly a MMA, functioning sport podcast. Knowing that you were going to go into the cage and knowing that you were going to lose, would you still do it? Runners, runners hold off because that's a little bit different because you people are crazy. You're special. If you knew you were going to play a baseball game, a basketball game, you're going to do, any sort of athletic endeavor, but you knew that you were going to lose, would you do it? And the reason I ask is because we tend to think too much about the outcome. We tend to focus on winning and losing. But that's not really the point of any of it. And I would hazard to guess that most of you, even if you knew that you were going to lose, you would still embark on whatever competition that it was. But yet we still, even knowing that you were going to lose and being okay with that, you would still do it, but you would still try your hardest. You would still fight as hard as you could. You'd probably actually even do better because you weren't worried about winning and losing. You already knew you were going to lose, and you would just perform. And that's one of the things that I see so often in MMA is fighters are concerned with winning and losing. Once they get past that, once they get past winning and losing, then they actually perform. If you were actually, sort of answer the question, I bet you would probably do it. Getting back to runners, they're a special breed of crazy because think about how many people that run half marathons, Ironmans, these crazy races. What are the races? The obstacle course races, all of these different types of races. None of them are winning. Unless you're Kenyan, you're not winning one of these freaking races. But they still do it. They know, think about all of the people that I ran a half marathon before, and I trained for it hard. I had a lot of fun. My body was broken afterwards. It was under 2 hours. I think, the race was the only one I did. I think it was an hour and 54 minutes. And I was proud of my time, and it was under 2 hours. And then, I think it was average of like 9-10 minute miles, something like that. And then I looked at the actual, people that were competitive in this race. They were running like 5-minute miles. I was so far beyond winning, let alone even competitive, that, I would never win a race like that. I would never win any race in my life, but yet I still did it. And that's what we have to get to with any sort of mental performance training with sports is being okay with the losing, but still trying your hardest. And that's what it comes down to. When I was younger, I would say the probably not only just in sports, but in my life, the greatest revelation I ever had, really as a human, was that I wasn't special, that I wasn't great, and that I wasn't destined for some sort of greatness or, really anything of grandeur. When I was younger, I really wanted to be cool. I wanted to be special. I wanted to be great. I read these great authors, I look at these great fighters, I look at, presidents, and my own megalomania or whatever it was, or naivety or something led me to believe that I was going to be one of these great people at some point in my life. And I wasn't, nothing, by thinking about being great, it didn't help me be great. It actually stifled me from being great in anything, even remotely good or moderately good or adequate, because I wouldn't do anything because it wasn't going to be perfect. I wanted to write a book, and I would think about it, and I would think about writing books, I would think about writing, but I never actually did anything. I wanted to have money, but I wouldn't get any jobs that weren't these prestigious or like high-paying or influential jobs, with a nice title, because I thought, no, I'm better than that. I don't want to do that. I don't want people seeing me do that. Once I realized that I wasn't great, I'm never going to be great, I'm not special, I'm just a guy. There's nothing special about me. Once I started to think that way, and I really did let my ego go with that, then I actually started enjoying life. I started writing. Not because I thought I was going to be some great writer. I still don't have. It would be nice if I published a book and everyone in the world loved it, and 10 years from now it was in the literary canon, but the reality of that is it's probably not going to happen. I've written some stuff, I published some stuff, and I'm an adequate writer on some areas, but I'm probably never going to be a great writer, and I'm okay with that. But being okay with not being a great writer is what led me to write my first words. It's what led me to write bad stories and be okay with it, because I didn't have any delusions of grandeur about those stories. I just wrote them for me. And little by little, I started writing for me more and more and more, and I got better at it and better at it. And now, next year I've got a book coming out. It's going to be published. I've written for Vice. I've written for literary magazines. I've done some stuff. I'm not, great by any means, but I've done more than what I did before I started thinking the way that I do now. And that's the same with MMA, with sports, with anything. If you go in thinking that you're going to be the best and you'll accept nothing else but the best, be prepared for failure. Because anyone that's good at anything didn't go in that way. They went in just wanting to do whatever it is they were doing, and they did it for themselves, and then eventually they got good enough at it that now they're making money, they're inventing things, they're special. But they didn't go in thinking they were special. I highly doubt Bill Gates as a kid thought he was going to be some magnificent programmer and change the world. He had access to a computer at a young age, which most people didn't. It was near him, and he just liked to code. So he coded again and again and again and again, and eventually he got good at it. The Bronte sisters, they weren't just this phenomenal troupe of sisters that could write. They wrote stories at a really young age, 5, 6, 7 years old. Day in, day out, bad stories, kids' stories. I mean, not bad stories, but bad stories in relation to what we think a good literary story is. But I mean, a good story for a kid. But these are just little stories that were not some masterpiece, but they did it because it was fun for them. Any athlete, football player, a boxer, MMA fighter, don't go into the sport thinking that you're going to be great. You better love it. You better enjoy it. If you ever get to the point where you're good enough to compete at something, then that's a starting point. But you need to love something, and you need to really enjoy it. And you need to enjoy it at an intrinsic level for yourself, as opposed to trying to win a title, trying to be great, trying to be the best of all time, yada, yada, yada. You need to actually enjoy it. Then you become good at it. Then eventually, if you're good enough and you train right and all of these other millions of things, then you become great at it, and so on and so forth. And I'm talking about this because I see so often out of all the fighters, I've got quite a stable of fighters at this point. I've got numerous fighters in the UFC. I've got one in the Bellator $1 million tournament, PFL $1 million tournament. And I would say the biggest issue that the fighters have, even at the highest level, is mental training. They're still worried about winning and losing, and that affects people. And if these fighters could actually let go, then they would blossom and actually go out there and perform at their best. Anytime I see interviews with fighters, and there's kind of 2 or 3 different types of interviews. You watch a UFC, you watch boxing, watch whatever you want. One of the things that you're going to see is the interviews that fighters give. One version is, what do you think your opponent, what do you think about your opponent? How do you think the fight's going to go? Yada, yada, yada. And the fighter X answers, I would die in there. He's got to kill me. I'll give my life, all of these things. Chances are that person loses. Go back and watch fights or upcoming fights. Watch how often somebody says they'll have to kill me in the ring. I'll die before I quit type of things. Those type of people, in my anecdotal experience, lose more often than not. Then there's another version who win more often than not. And when you ask them about the fight, they're going to say something like this. I'm only concerned with myself. My preparation was good. I don't care what that fighter's going to do. I can't focus on the outcome. All I'm going to do is go in there, do what I know I can do, and focus on the things that I need to focus on. And winning and losing will take care of itself. Chances are you've seen some interviews like that, and I bet you more often than not, unless they're going up against somebody with the same mindset and the same skill set, chances are those people win a good majority of the time. There's a reason for that, and that's mental conditioning and mental training. And what we do is outcome-based performance is a bad idea. You don't want to focus on the outcome, because when you're focusing on the outcome, which is something you cannot control, you're not focusing on the things that you can control. And that's all that we can focus on ever. Doesn't matter if it's sports, doesn't matter if it's your job, doesn't matter if you're your wife and kids, your bills, your health, nothing. You can only focus on the things that you can control. You cannot focus on the things that you can't control. And if you change that mindset of only focusing on the things that you can control, you eliminate anxiety. Because that's where anxiety stems from. It stems from focusing on things that are out of your control. But if you focus on I always use the example Dan Henderson. We know that Dan Henderson's going to throw his overhand right. And if you focus on that overhand right, you're not focusing on your footwork, your head movement, your attacks. You're only focusing on what he's going to do. Instead of focusing on Dan Henderson's overhand right, you focus on circling to the right, away from his power hand, and keeping your left hand up. Now you took the power away from him, and you gave it to yourself. Now the anxiety's gone because you know that you can control your left hand and the way you circle, but you cannot control Dan Henderson or anyone else in anything anyone else does. So in summation, on the mental side of things, if you do nothing more than just worry about the things that you can control and stop worrying about the things that you can't control, really regardless of what aspect we're talking about in life, whether it's sports or in your life, things are going to get better. You are going to perform better. And little by little, your anxieties will go down a little bit and you're just going to perform